Is Will Levis legit? We're going to find out on Thursday night in Pittsburgh. We'll talk about that game and more on a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Let's roll.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tyler Rowland, local expert for the Locked On Titans podcast, here with Alex Clancy, local expert from Locked On Cardinals. We're going to talk about this big Thursday night football matchup between the Steelers and the Titans. Is Will Levis legit after his amazing performance in Week 8? Also, the Raiders are falling apart, but it might be what's best for the team. Also, we'll go over the best games of Week 9, take a look at the biggest matchups this weekend. Before we get into all of that, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's Crossover Thursday presented by PrizePicks here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure to check out your favorite team's crossover episode and get behind the enemy lines information. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use that code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. Make sure to get subscribed and stay subscribed. Locked On NFL is available on YouTube, whatever podcast app that you use. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. But with that being said, Alex, I am obviously someone who covers the Tennessee Titans, so I have my own thoughts about the Will Levis debut. I am in the trenches, you could say, and maybe I'm a little too close to the fire. So I think it would be better to start out with your take on the Will Levis situation, coming from a team that is in the NFC, a team on the other side of the country that has no real attachment or hate for the Titans also on that side of things. Watching Will Levis's debut, 4 touchdown passes, leading the Titans to a win over the Falcons. Do you think that Will Levis is legit?
There's a couple different ways to look at this. One, is it Matt Flynn or is it Patrick Mahomes?
Mm-hmm.
Matt Flynn threw 6 touchdown passes for Green Bay and then made $30 million with Seattle and the Raiders afterwards, and Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. The one thing, and we don't know, it's 1 week. It's a nice reprieve from Ryan Tannehill and the boring-ass offense they've run.
They're at least more exciting to watch, you know?
Yeah. It made me miss DeAndre Hopkins as an Arizona Cardinals person who's covered the Cardinals. The word that I will use, surprisingly, with Will Levis, it was effortless. It wasn't, he came in with the confidence of, this is how I play football. I'm going to huck it to wide receivers down the field, and I'm going to let them make plays. And he threw dots 60 yards down the field. The one to Westbrook and Keeney was, that throw off his back foot in a rhythm reminded me of the throw that Zach Wilson made during the combine or during his pro day that got him the 2nd overall pick. That everybody was like, oh my God, with nobody on the field aside from the receiver, he did that in real game time. And I was like I haven't screamed watching a football game this year yet with a throw, and that throw made me scream. So is he legit? I don't know, but it's sexy as hell to watch. And if he can replicate it again on a short week against a good defense in Pittsburgh, Ryan Tannehill ain't going to see the field again.
Right. And I agree with you. And from the Titans' perspective, to add some context, the Titans have historically struggled with the Steelers. I don't have the exact numbers right in front of me. I've written about it this week, talked about it on my show, but I'm pretty sure it is. The Titans are 0-4 against the Steelers since 2013. Since 2003, the Titans are 3-8 against the Steelers, 1-5 in Pittsburgh. So the Titans do not play well and have not played well against the Steelers for 20 years and have played even worse in Pittsburgh. So if Will Levis, as a rookie on a short week, goes into a hostile environment, an all-time historic environment in Pittsburgh, let's be honest, they have an incredible home field advantage there in what I would still lovingly call Heinz Field. I know it's like AccuSure Field now or whatever, but it's always Heinz to us, the big ketchup bottle. If he can go in and bring the Titans a win against a team in an environment that they don't often win in, I think it would mean a lot. But I would compare Will Levis to a home run hitter in baseball. Okay. Especially nowadays in baseball with the emphasis on launch angle and exit velocity and all of that. We're seeing more strikeouts. We're seeing less guys who hit for average and more guys who are just worried about that slugging percentage.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
maybe based on the numbers, that is the right thing to do. And maybe based on the numbers, Will Levis's idea is the right thing to do. But we know he can go up there and hit a home run. We've seen him with the big arm throw home runs. 3 of those touchdown passes for Will Levis are in the top 10 in the NFL this year in air distance for a touchdown throw. Like, he is throwing bombs. 3 of them just in 1 week, top 10 the whole season for the NFL. So we know he can go and hit the home run. The Steelers aren't going to allow him to do that, most likely.
Yeah.
They're going to want to keep everything underneath. Can you pick us apart? Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Can you be consistently successful with underneath throws, reading defenses, fitting it in? He's a rookie. That's tough to do, to read defenses and process that quick. If he's able to do that against Pittsburgh and win that game, I think there's a good chance that this is a player that is legit. But obviously right now it's probably too early to know. But like you, I am encouraged by what I saw, but there's still improvements that need to be made.
Put some respect on DeAndre Hopkins' name, damn it. I don't understand why. Last year, what was the stat without, like, for A.J. Brown had more receiving yards than the entire Tennessee Titans team through a certain amount of weeks?
Yeah,
Okay.
not anymore.
DeAndre Hopkins is, when healthy and when given the opportunity, a top 10 receiver in this league still. I don't understand. I don't care if he's older. He's never been fast. He ran down the field, and yes, he's handsy. He may be the handsiest receiver in the NFL.
Hey, AJ Terrell sold that penalty. That was his fault. He flopped is what happened, and they didn't call it.
I thought DeAndre Hopkins was out of bounds, too. Like, I thought that was going to be a hat throw from a ref, but he tiptoed, ended up getting back in the field to play and catch the pass. But, yeah, like, the bigger story here for me for Thursday night is, can Pittsburgh score points? They're averaging 16 points a game through 7 weeks. That
with a lot of defensive touchdowns.
Sorry?
With a lot of defensive touchdowns.
Yeah, right.
Scoring points for the offense.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see. I cannot believe that they have 4 wins already. With how wide open things are still. This is a pivotal game for Tennessee. Like, if Tennessee can make a push here and get a W on the road, you're going to be having different conversations about, like, it's good they kept Derrick Henry. Let's run the 2 running back attack. Let's get Will Levis moving the ball down the field, because they've got weapons-ish there. So, I mean, if Will Levis can just come in and ball, I mean, Tennessee wins in the playoffs. We've seen it. So,
yeah, they can find a way to do it. I think these are 2 teams that want to run the ball, want to play defense, don't have high-scoring offenses. Whichever team forces turnovers in this game, I think, is ultimately going to win it. I do believe on FanDuel right now, the Titans are 3-point favorites. If it stays at 3 points, I would take that. If it drops to 2.5, I would not. So that's where I'm looking at that right now. But we're going to move forward because there was big news in the NFL on Wednesday. We all woke up to it. The Las Vegas Raiders cleaning house. They should, and what they should do next is make sure that they take a coach-quarterback combo from college football. We'll explain that in just a moment. Before we get into it, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. Look, we've all ordered pizza, wings, soda, burgers, even buns on DoorDash. Got it delivered right before the game. Perfect timing. You guys know DoorDash is the place to go. And if you don't know that, I am here to tell you. DoorDash is absolutely fantastic. Again, you can access food from local restaurants so you can support your local community. Anything from retail to grocery to restaurants. Again, they have everything that you need on DoorDash. And right now, you can get up to 50% off, up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. All you got to do is download the DoorDash app, enter the code LOCKED23. It's subject to change. Terms apply. But again, that's up to 50% off, up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. All you got to do is download the DoorDash app, enter the code LOCKED23. That's LOCKED 23. Subject to change. Terms do apply. All right, Alex. The Raiders are blowing it up. Mark Davis, maybe this is complete fabrication, isn't it? But I'm just trying to guess on what the mood was. Mark Davis thinking about getting beat in embarrassing fashion. Jimmy Garoppolo, we see Devontae Adams slamming his helmet. Mark Davis maybe having a couple of drinks, maybe a nice big cigar. You know what? F them. They're done. Fire Josh McDaniels. Fire the GM. Fire the OC. We're starting the rookie quarterback. He went full Jim Irsay from last year. All right. But I got to tell you, I think it's the right thing. All right. I think it's the right thing to do for the Raiders. Alex, we have talked on this show. It is crazy that Mark Davis let Josh McDaniels, who anybody with a brain could have guessed would not have worked out as a head coach when the move happened. This isn't hindsight. Everybody, when the move happened, was like, I don't think this is a very good hire for the Raiders. At least I was, and I know you were. So my thing is, how did Mark Davis let this dude and Josh McDaniels force out Derek Carr only to bring in a worse quarterback that has no emotional attachment to the fan base? I feel like that's something that me and you have talked about since last season when the Derek Carr stuff started. Like, the right thing to do would be fire Josh McDaniels and keep Derek Carr. You know what I mean? That would have been the right move here. I have a hot take, and I just want you to give me your thoughts. I think what the Raiders should do is exactly what they're doing. Fire Josh McDaniels. Bring in an inexperienced coach, elevate him. Play a rookie quarterback who's never going to be a starter in the NFL if your team is good. Tank the season. Finish with 4 or 3 wins. Find a way to hire Lincoln Riley and draft Caleb Williams. Can't you imagine Caleb Williams with his fingernails painted black with little white skulls on them for a Raiders emblem going out there in Las Vegas and making plays? I just think that bringing Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley from Los Angeles to Las Vegas collectively is the move. And I think the Raiders should hire Lincoln Riley and do whatever they possibly can to get that number 1 pick. And heck, if you listen to Dane Brugler from The Athletic, Drake may be the number 1 quarterback in the draft by the time that we get there. These things change. So I think they'll have a good opportunity to get a good young quarterback. If I were the Raiders, I would do everything I can to grab that LA hype from the college and USC and bring that over to the Raiders next year.
It's funny you say that because I saw on the moniker, like, Tyler and I like to surprise each other with segments. And we had a completely different segment set up for this specific segment. And when I saw this on the side, I'm like, oh, sweet. Raiders must tank for QB. Awesome. I had a thought. When you said head coach and quarterback tandem, I got it different.
Oh,
what about Jim Harbaugh and JJ McCarthy?
Oh,
because here's the thing.
Yep.
Here's the thing. The Raiders roster, as currently constructed, will probably win 2 games with Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. If you get to 4 or 5 wins, you ain't getting a top 3 pick. There's so many bad teams in this league. The Cardinals, Carolina, Chicago. I know Bears. Carolina goes to Chicago, New England. Like, there are going to be some teams in Minnesota at this point. There's going to be some teams that are going to be stuck up top, able to tank by association of a bad roster more than the Raiders at this point, unless this quarterback's terrible. O'Connell, whatever his name is terrible.
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell from Purdue.
There are going to be multiple quarterbacks that can be taken in the top 10. There will be, obviously, multiple quarterbacks. And if the Raiders, I think Jim Harbaugh is a much better move than Lincoln Riley. I think Lincoln Riley is Fugazi. I think Lincoln Riley is a situation where...
And who does he compare to? Who you covered?
Yeah. Well, he was prolific, at least. They didn't have a good defense anywhere. I mean, Oklahoma had a pretty good defense with Kenneth Murray a couple years ago, but he's never won anywhere. Like,
it just seems like Cliff Kingsbury to me. Yeah. It's a similar thing to Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, right. So, like, with him, but Jim Harbaugh, say what you want. Yes, whatever's going on with the sign stealing, whatever side of the aisle you're on with that, cool. Jim Harbaugh's won in the NFL. He is the leader of an organization. He will come in, plug and play. That defense will turn around in a year. The offense will be palatable, and those good. So that's what I would look at if you're going to bring somebody with a tandem for the quarterback. JJ McCarthy's been good. He's been good in the NFL.
I'm seeing him projected as a potential late top 10 pick, like 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. I don't know how I feel about that personally, but now's not the time to debate those things.
Really quick,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. You know how funny this is? One last thing, because I know we've got more to talk about, but, we go free-flowing here at times. You know how you talked about Will Levis with home runs or strikeouts, and that's what it is? Do you think that's the reason for the polarization in the NFL now, where people are just dart throwing at quarterbacks? And
Yeah.
70% of them don't work. So you're going to have a bad team, and then you're going to have to sign a veteran for too much money, and you're not going to have a good roster, and then all of those things. You think that's why the quote-unquote middle class of the NFL is starting to dissipate?
Yeah, I think because of how difficult it is to play against these defenses, you need such a talented quarterback to do it, that now most of these teams look like, in the past, maybe we could have Jimmy Garoppolo, San Francisco 49er our way to the Super Bowl. Maybe we could have, Eli Manning on his with the last Giants team our way to a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco and the Ravens, which Flacco and the Ravens and Foles and the Eagles, it's hard to use those because those QBs went nuts during the playoffs and had like an elite stretch that they never replicated ever again. So it's hard to compare that. But Jimmy Garoppolo for the 49ers in 2019, getting to the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, that's a perfect example right there. I think it gets harder and harder and harder to win that way as we get further along. And that's why you see a team like San Francisco give it all up and give a chance on Trey Lance, because they know that at the end of the day, it's going to be much easier to repeat this success and give yourself a chance to win a championship year after year if you have one of the elite guys. And it's just so difficult to do it without. So I think that part of that is, hey, it's NBA. It's the NBA's philosophy coming into the NFL. If we don't have the guy and we can't win, our fans are educated enough now to know what we're doing and not freak out about it, So I think that is something that will happen going forward, and we'll continue to see, teams just saying, screw it. And whether that be tanking or whether that be trading up into the end of the first round and trying to get a QB or, make a move like that, like the Titans were trying to do and ultimately did with Will Levis. You might see much more of that now, and much more of like trades are happening more in the NFL. The trade deadline is starting to pick up more and have more action than it did before. I think that feeds into what we're talking about here. Teams are more willing to sell off pieces for draft picks and commit to the future, we will call it. You know what I mean?
And vice versa. If you want to win now,
and vice versa, because of how it's happened. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I do think that you're on to something that's gradually changing. And honestly, I think a lot of it comes from the education of fans because of the NBA doing it so much and it being such a widespread conversation in the NBA.
God, I wish we could do this for an hour. Like, I wish we could just talk about the James Harden trade and how he's ruined the NBA for an hour. Maybe Nick Angstead will let us stage sometime on Locked On NBA.
Yeah.
I was going to be Locked On Cardinals. Tyler Rowan Locked On Titans. We make up Locked On NFL Thursday. We were gone last week. I missed my boy. We're back. Now it's the best segment of the week for us. Best NFL games of Week 9. That's next. It'll start across the pond on a different continent with probably the best game, and we'll discuss other teams who are less than 500 records now could potentially make the playoffs, all that more in the next jam-packed 10 minutes here. This episode of Locked On NFL Thursday is brought to you by PrizePicks. So with basketball season here, you can now pick combos for projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So, for example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo with 3 points made and receptions. That's badass. Like, that is a new wrinkle into PrizePicks, making it.
Can I just say, better. I love PrizePicks too, not to interrupt the read, but I have to say this. One of my best friends, we call him P, so we'll call him PrizePicks P here on this show. I love FanDuel myself, but I've never seen anybody love FanDuel like P. So I'm just saying, if one of my best friends is on that thing every single day and he loves to be able to combine the different sports now, it's like excellent. So I just had to give a shout out to P, who is the biggest PrizePicks fan I know, and you guys should be like P too.
Yeah, you should be like P too. Not Patrick Peterson. Not him. Yeah. Not him. I call him Petty Patrick Peterson from his time in Arizona. Anyways, this is going to be a 3-minute read. If you don't know about PrizePicks itself, you pick 2 or more projections, and you can win up to 25 times your cheese if you do 6 projections. You just pick more or less than the PrizePicks projections, and you could win a whole boatload. Okay, go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, it's time. Alex
So
Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Tyler Rowland, Locked
Great
On
week.
Titans. We make up Locked On NFL Thursday. Thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen, free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Games of the week. This is where Tyler and I just pick some games and we say that they're good or we say that they're meaningful, and then we explain why we think that. That's your Cliff Notes version of the next 8 or 9 minutes of your life. So let's start in Frankfurt. Okay. Miami at Kansas City. The scheduling of the NFL should be reprimanded for not having this on U.S. soil. Bearing this into the early morning. Now, listen, East Coast, very rarely.
Yeah, what are you talking about? That's breakfast time.
Yeah, for you. Okay.
Yeah.
I pride myself in being on the West Coast because I don't have to wait until 1 o'clock to watch football. I don't have to wait until 4 o'clock on Sunday to watch football. I don't have to wait until 2 a.m. to watch Sunday night football. Now, with this, when they're overseas, 6:30 a.m., it'll be 7:30 because we're time changing in Arizona. I'm good with it. But Tyler, is this a bigger play? NFL Scheduling Committee saw this game week 8 or week 9, and they're like, you know what? It can't be Jacksonville versus Tennessee anymore. It can't be Jacksonville versus Buffalo. It's got to be two of the best offenses that we have in the NFL playing against each other in Frankfurt, Germany. Is this a bigger play by the NFL to put this game over there?
Yeah, 100%. And I think they have a hold of London. Like the England market, the NFL feels comfortable now that they have a good hold. They get good turnouts. The crowd's lively. The action leading up to the game is good. So I think the NFL feels comfortable with their standing in London now and in England. I think they really want to grab a hold of Germany. They really want to expand on the excitement for the NFL in Germany. And I think putting the two most exciting offenses in the NFL there is definitely a coordinated move. I just want to point out, look at this schedule on Sunday. In the morning, 6-2 Dolphins against 6-2 Chiefs. Then 1 o'clock, 5-2 Seahawks, 6-2 Ravens. Then 4 o'clock, 5-2 Cowboys, 7-1 Eagles. Then Sunday night, 5-3 Bills, 4-3 Bengals. I mean, my God, what an incredible Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is when it's perfect because, weekly disclaimer, appreciate football.
Yes.
We're now halfway through the season, and it went like your wedding night, I would assume. I've never been married. It's like we're
I'm
2
not
months
married
into
yet
the
either,
season.
so yours, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, appreciate football, number one. Now it's like you can watch bad football. It doesn't matter because it's football. It's cake. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's cake. When you have great games that are meaningful, like you mentioned, this is like I'm like Buffalo and Cincinnati, as you mentioned. We talked about the Seattle-Buffalo game or Seattle-Cincinnati game 2 weeks ago about how it's a true litmus test for both teams to really kind of see where they are. Cincinnati and Seattle tends to rise. Cincinnati contends to rise with the healthy. This is like we're just on watch for Buffalo to implode. And if they don't, then you kind of turn the corner. Like maybe they figured things out. It was just early, an early malaise in the early part of the season with mistakes. Dalton Kincaid seems to be the real deal. Dawson Knox potentially going on IR is addition by subtraction. They signed Leonard Fournette. I'm assuming he's going to be active on Sunday. But yeah, man, like there's so many. And then on the other side, this is because the lack of middle class, as I mentioned, it's kind of dissipating in the NFL. There's a whole other litany of games to watch for the Tankathon 2024. Right. And it's not Tankathon. Right. No teams tank. Okay. They just don't have the roster necessary to compete in the NFL. Every single player in the NFL can get replaced by somebody else, aside from the one, the top flight players. Nobody's going to try and lose games and potentially lose a game check in 2024. Okay.
Yeah.
But you look at games like Arizona and Cleveland. Okay. The Rams, Green Bay, Chicago, New Orleans. Like there are games, Tampa Bay, Houston. There are a lot of like Indy and Carolina. Carolina could win 2 games in a row. They could definitely beat Indy if they play the way that they did last week.
Both those teams could be 3-6 soon, and I wouldn't be surprised. They don't seem like they're that different.
So there's so many different wrinkles to this. Now, Tyler, you ran down the games. We know why these games are good at this point. I want to ask you this. There are 5 teams in the NFC with winning records. Out of 16, 5. Okay, there are a bunch of teams, obviously, in the AFC with losing records. Is there a team with 2 wins, 3 wins through 8 weeks, whether they've had a bye or not, that you're like, you know what? That's the team that you still need to watch when you get to that 6 or 7 spot when the playoffs come around in the next 7 or 8 weeks?
Let me ask you this first, Alex. I know that you had a team in mind, or at least were ready to pick a team. Is the team that you think in the AFC or the NFC? Because I have
Fool
two.
me 10 times. Shame on me. It's going to be the same team.
Okay. I will go with this team then.
Okay.
I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 3-4 are going to make the playoffs. They play at the Texans this week. The Texans are also 3-4, but the Texans are starting to come back down to earth after that great start where everybody was high on Stroud. And I still think Stroud is the answer and the guy. And I think Stroud's a great player. He was my QB1 coming out of the draft. But the Texans don't have the roster to play as well as CJ Stroud is playing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to last. And I think the Texans are starting to come down to earth. Also, I just think Tampa Bay has veteran players who have won games. They have enough talent on offense with their weapons. I think Baker Mayfield is good enough in the NFC to lead a team to a low playoff seed. They have great players on defense as well, which I think can win them games, especially as we get into the colder months of the year. So I think the Buccaneers at 3-4 are a team with a losing record that still makes the playoffs.
I've got 2, and I can see that. I mean, Baker's level-headed enough. You know, they've got enough talent on offense and defense to be able to make that happen. So for the AFC, the one fool me 1,000 times, shame on me. This is the 1,000 times and one. It's the Chargers.
Yep.
It's the Chargers.
Yeah,
it has to be. Like Quentin Johnson,
they have too much talent. They have too much talent. It's unacceptable.
Right. And if they stay healthy, that's like they can win despite Brandon Staley. Okay, if you've noticed, Brandon Staley
play the Jets this week. They should absolutely win that game on Monday Night Football.
And the Jets have won 3 games in a row, right? With Zach Wilson.
Yep.
Brandon Staley has started to punt on 4th and 2 at the 50. So there's something that's changing there. Yeah. Do you remember this season? It seems like 2 months ago and yesterday when he went for it on 4th and 1 at the 25 in Minnesota and almost lost that game after going for it on 4th and 1 in his own 25 the week before and losing. Like, things have shifted over there. And if you believe Kellen Moore, like, and it's funny, like, is Kellen Moore the problem? Like, that's going to be a conversation we could have later. Like, with Dak kind of playing a little bit better with Kellen Moore gone, Justin Herbert having time. So the Chargers, until it's not, Quentin Johnson seems to be catching his stride a little bit with Mike Williams out and Josh Palmer hurt. But the one for me, and I've talked about this, and I said this guy was a dark horse MVP candidate if everything went properly, is Matthew Stafford and the Rams. They're 3-5. Okay, they're 2 games out of the 7 seed right now. They still, if he's healthy, you know, he had the thumb. If he's healthy,
dude, I don't know. They signed John Walford. I think the only thing that derails that is the thumb injury because Stafford was playing incredible football.
Right. So if he's healthy, and Cooper Kupp's healthy, and Darrell Henderson and Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua, like they're healthy, I think they could definitely make that 17. They have enough firepower on offense and an okay enough defense to be able to make the 7 seed.
And they play the 2-5 Packers this week, who seem to be just letting go of the rope. So they definitely could get back to 3-4 and have a great chance to get back to a winning record soon.
Right. And that's all right. And is that it? I mean, there's a lot of
one more.
A lot of bad football, man. There's a lot of bad football. Who is it?
We have to say it, and then we'll go. The Titans. If the Titans come out and beat the Steelers, they move to 4-4. In 2019, the Titans made a change at starting quarterback after 6 games. They were 2-4. They went to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Now, this Titans roster is nowhere near as talented as that one was, especially on the offensive line. But the AFC South is still not that great outside of the Jags. There's not a lot of great teams in the AFC in the middle class, in my opinion, that are significantly better. If Will Levis is legit, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, the Titans could get to 4-4 and maybe make a run after their mini bye throughout the rest of the season. Their schedule is not that tough. They play the Bucks, the Panthers, the Texans twice, the Colts again. I know they lost to the Colts before, but the Colts are getting worse as the season goes on. Right. Just saying, there are a lot of, and they play the Jags still twice. And if they beat them both times, the Titans could absolutely get back into the playoff chase and be a team to get one of those low seeds. They're not catching Jacksonville for the division by any means, but just saying, while we're looking at these teams, there's not a lot of great options. Feel like it's worth mentioning them, even if it's some home cooking. But with that being said, that is going to do it for a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. As I always say, stay safe out there. Start your weekend early.